The Man in the Oven. The last free morning of Daniel Larson's life was gentle as a whisper. He was awakened by a soft light coming through the panoramic windows. How peaceful, he thought, not knowing that it would be the last peaceful morning of his life. He got up, squinted at the sun-drenched room, and stretched his white body with the chalk-white hair. Who would have thought I would do so well, he thought, not knowing that it soon would not go so well for him anymore. Daniel Larson, being a stockbroker, was the best, if you asked his top boss. And although Daniel knew very well that most of his success rested on a solid foundation and an unmatched ability to overlook illegalities, it didn't particularly bother him. That was just the way it was supposed to be. And yes, it was also fair, he did have a disabled brother after all. Suddenly, there was golden yellow sunlight, and it started a chilling cold. What was that sound? The sudden vibrations carried its way down his spine. But then he realized it was because his mobile phone in the pocket of his trousers was ringing. It was Justin Lawson, his informant, who, in a panicked, breathless frenzy, was trying to explain something about the scammer's scam being discovered. "What bloody idiot," Daniel said. "Listen here, Justin Lawson, going forward, it will be as we have agreed. You keep telling me where to invest my money, and I'll keep pretending you don't exist. Got it?" he said, smiling at his own skills. It was the last time Daniel Larson smiled. After this, all went black. Deputy Chief of Police Richard Jackson looked angrily up at the heavily built Abraham from Internal Affairs, who stood smirking at him with his mouth full of sandwich. He didn't have the energy to respond. He was so hungover and reeked so much of alcohol that he could actually smell it himself. Abraham walked away, and Richard continued to stare stiffly down at the cafeteria table in the Dallas police station. Totally undersized cafeteria. Things weren't going well, and it had been a thirsty night. He had recently been relegated to another department in the basement of the station, specifically a department to which one was sent, Richard painfully realized, if one's career was over, and whose only task was to wrap up old cases that nobody cared about anyway. He still had no idea what had happened to the stockbrokers. Daniel Larson and the other 10 stockbrokers who had mysteriously disappeared in 2013, and he teetered on a knife edge between being utterly obsessed and completely indifferent about Daniel Larson's fate. Today, he was indifferent. So what if someone took down those finance crooks? They had cheated, he thought. Why should he, whose wife had left and whose account was at zero, care about it? "You shouldn't drink so much, Richard," said his assistant Omar gently, as he placed a cup of steaming hot coffee in front of him. "Do you think I drink for fun? Do you think I like it, huh?" Richard replied, but that was it. Omar looked at him deeply with his ice-blue eyes and said something philosophical that one couldn't help but overhear, because at that very moment he took a sip of the too-hot coffee and sprayed it all over the cafeteria table in front of him. "For fuck's sake," Richard said, before he looked down and noticed that his coffee spit had landed on a note in the 21-year-old newspaper lying in front of him. "I know what happened to Daniel Larson," he said, rising with a previously undiscovered enthusiasm in front of Omar. He was a handsome man, standing there among his ceramics, meticulously arranged on specially designed shelves in the large studio. There were plates, sculptures, cups, and pitchers in all colors and sizes. His talent was indisputable, but not in the circles of the many art enthusiasts who constantly swarmed around him could attest to that. If only they knew that there was human ash in the ceramics they were buying at a high price, he thought, once again admiring his own genius. Imagine using the ceramic oven to hide the real crime of disposing of the 10 stockbrokers. "Let me out, it's hot." A muffled sound in the background. He turned around. Incredible. Sometimes he actually managed to forget that Daniel Larson was inside the ceramic oven. Over the last 10 years, he had gradually turned it up 5 degrees, so it was now at 50 degrees. But Daniel Larson had never accepted that he was supposed to die. Every day the same scream. "Let me out, it's hot." Yes, of course, damn it, the oven is hot, he thought. Maybe he should have turned the oven up 10 degrees every month, he thought. Daniel Larson was nowhere near dying, there was after all plenty of water in the oven after all. Larson deserved to die, he thought. He walked over to the oven, looked inside through the oven door. There was blood, feces, and urine everywhere. What a utter mess, he thought. Well, Daniel Larson. The day has come when I turn the oven up to 200 degrees and burn you alive. He shouted through the door and turned up the oven, while the stockbroker whimpered, cried, and begged for his life. "Don't do it," screamed Richard, who had sneaked into the studio with his pistol drawn and Omar right on his heels. "I know it was Daniel Larson's father who ran over your bicycling mother over in a left-turn accident, and I know that you were sexually abused by your father for a long period afterward. But it's not his fault." The ceramist looked at Richard Jackson. "I admire your intellect. he shouted, as he distractedly pushed a ceramic club, causing it to topple over and crush Omar's right foot. Richard aimed and fired, but his hands was shaking from a hangover, missing the shot. The ceramist rushed out. Richard Jackson had to think fast, if to follow the man, or turn to Daniel inside the oven. He chose the man in the oven and managed to pull Daniel Larson out at the last minute. Severely disfigured and shocked. "I guess I got what I deserved," thought Daniel Larson, as he reflected on all the money he had stolen from the unsuspecting poor and now regretted it. Both Richard Jackson and Omar got a medal.